Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Carefulist, the podcast. I'm so glad you could join us today. We are talking with Angela Fairhurst, who is the founder and CEO of Geri-Gadgets. Welcome, Angela.
Thanks for having me.
I am really looking forward to this conversation because, well, it's just going to take so many twists and turns that I can't wait for people to hear. But we'll start in the beginning, which is your caregiving story. Could you please share that with us?
My mom was actually misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's when she had Lewy body dementia. So it was a bit of a wild ride because it took 4 years before a proper diagnosis.
Whoa.
I know. And if you know anything about Lewy body, they have hallucinations, but you can't give them antipsychotics. So my mom ended up with 7 different antipsychotic medications and it ended up having bad reactions and 7 different hospitalizations. And they were awful. I mean, one side effect was her crawling on the floor like an animal. Another was her taking her clothes off in the middle of the hallway, reducing
Yeah.
inhibitions entirely. Another, would she be completely comatose, like awful.
Mhm.
And then the last one, she wasn't eating or drinking. And I'm going to her care home. She was home for a long time, but when she didn't know anybody, but she became so dangerous, actually, that she took a
Yeah.
knife to her partner. Like, I don't know, she was found in the garage. She needed 36 hours of care in 24 hours when we switched her to a home. But and it was close to where I live. I live in Los Angeles. But I was going all the time. And that last 7th medication, I went 3 out of 4 days in a row and I knew something was wrong. I could
Yeah.
always detect UTIs, but this was different than that. She
Mhm.
was like, is she eaten? So the 3 out of 4 days, she's non-responsive. 911, UCLA emergency. She had lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks, and she was a liter short of fluid. I don't
Oh
even
my
know
word.
how she made it out of that, but she did.
Hmm.
And then that's when she was finally properly diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. But then she was still fighting her way through this,
Hmm.
struggling to communicate. And that's when I saw her touching sensory paper with her. She had a clenched hand, but her good hand.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, there's a sensory need and there's a communication that she wasn't being able to get out. And that's the
Hmm.
beginning of my journey with Geri-Gadgets, is trying to find something for her. I can
Yeah.
go deeper into that right now, yeah. So when I
Sure.
saw that, that's when I started to bring children's toys. And I started with one of those buckets, and I take this one out with the shapes.
Mhm.
And my mom had the clenched hand.
Yeah. My
Um,
mom had that too.
yeah, but so she picked up the shapes. She couldn't possibly get them into the
Hmm.
hole. That was too complicated. And she's taking them, picking them up, like sipping on them like they were
Hmm.
cups. But the bucket idea I loved because it was interesting to her. So put that
Right.
aside. Then I start to bring children's toys.
Hmm.
Well, that doesn't work. They're either too childish. Other
Hmm.
things are, I brought fabric, that's coming apart, so that's making a mess.
Hmm.
Shredding, things are toxic when mouthed. I
Yep.
couldn't find anything. The fidget toys are like goo inside. That's horrifying. So either
Hmm.
it's too complicated and all of these horrible things. And I am looking in my own kitchen and I have silicone everywhere. And that, it's heat proof, it's smell proof, it's waterproof. And I then had my aha moment and I cut down a pot holder that was a square about this size. And I brought it to my mom
Hmm.
and she loved the sound that it made, folded over like a taco, and she's
Hmm.
patting on it, and we throw it back and forth, and it was like magic
Right.
that she woke up to this, and all this stuff that was colorful, bright for the aging eye, not childlike,
Mhm.
not primary color, but perfect. Then I was on a mission for Geri-Gadgets. So this is how the fidget gadget bucket came to pass first with
Hmm.
the sensory toys. And I can go into the products now if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
So the fidget gadget has 5 manipulatives of different textures to try and get motion is lotion here. So this was trying to get her hand going. So the tugger is really good, and we could do this together, but you don't have to have a right or left-handed person. It doesn't matter. You could do this alone or with somebody. So that works really well. And then the click chain is reinforced so it's loud and, to stimulate noise like cracking ice or, walking on fall leaves, and yet you can
Yeah.
bend it and shape it and fidget with it all you need to. Poppers are really popular, but this is medical grade. Again, everything is dishwasher safe in the Geri-Gadget line,
Mhm.
and this is also a great shape for the hand. So this was why a triangle, and also
Yeah.
yeah, and obviously you do the popping too. So that's
Right.
one sound thing. And then eggs are familiar, but this one is I say Goldilocks, not too hard, not too soft, not too small, not too big. So it can go in the mouth. If their mouth is very, very big, don't give it to them. But this is not got goo inside, so it's really good for that. And also it could be like it's a stress ball type thing.
Yeah.
You could do it in a group setting and roll it around in a group. So everything is made for single user or multi-user or intergenerationally too as well. So Geri-Gadgets work like that. Should I keep going on
Sure.
the line? And the shapes bucket, I was really inspired by Tetris. I love Tetris.
Oh, us
So
too.
these shapes have, I just love Tetris. Have the stars on the one side. There's stars in the head of the logo.
Mhm.
Um, Opening the mind, opening creativity, endless possibilities, failure free. So I created these, and there's a smooth surface too, little head on
Oh,
the left.
nice.
Right, so that you can, stack or sort or do anything. And I use the bucket a lot. I'll show
Mhm.
you, so that they can lay it flat if they have further along. But you can stack in any which way you like, build any way, use the bucket, and endless possibilities of this. So it's creativity. I don't ever do anything twice that's the same.
Right.
So that's the shapes bucket. It's really quite fun, and that's a great multi-generational thing too. Build with your
Mhm.
grandkid. These are creating memorable moments, and that if you do, a grandchild is helping a grandparent, they're helping each other and they don't even know it, and creating these great moments and exercise and all that fun without even realizing they're doing help for both.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what I really like about it is that it is nonverbal communication, right? You can interact, but nobody has to say a word. You don't have to try and figure out what somebody's trying to communicate. You can just build things together. You can put things in the bucket and take them out. You can hand things back and forth and make eye contact while you do that and smile. And that goes a really long way.
Engagement is so important, and my mom lost her words in
Yes,
the
so did
right
mine.
way. Yeah, and silicone is it's the closest material to human skin touch. So if you
Mm,
start with something this soothing, now I know I talk fast in a conversation with you and me. I don't talk fast with somebody with dementia. You go really slow and easy
mhm,
and smooth, and a little engagement takes a while.
mhm.
It's a lot. A little is so much. But
Yes.
it takes the pressure off of, I think all care home communities or any visitation should have a Geri-Gadget bucket, because that eases the bridges that whole thing. They don't need to know who you are or
Right.
whether you don't need to ask any questions. You don't have a stress of, are they going to remember me? Because
Hmm.
they might not, but the feeling you leave behind is going to remain, even if
Yes.
the memory of exactly what it is doesn't matter. The
Right.
feeling matters, the engagement matters. That's what you leave them with. That's why I try and convince people not to, that will say, oh, what's the point? They're not going to remember I was there. Well, the point is the feeling will remain.
Right. And you know you were there.
Well,
And
and
if
the
you're taking
caregivers,
children, it gives them something to do, and you're giving memories to the children who will remember having that interaction with their grandparent or loved one that they're visiting.
It's so important because also the caregivers that are caring for your parents
Mm.
and loved ones or whomever they are need to know that you care too. That you're
Yes.
not just putting them away, because listen, illness is hard in general. Dementia
Mm.
is really hard
Yeah.
because the person that was there is not cognitively the same. It's such a
Mhm.
tough, tough, tough disease. But it doesn't mean that they're not there. It doesn't mean they've turned into
Right.
children. We don't actually know what they're maintaining, what their capacity is on some level anyway. And my uncle, I'm going to finish with this, but my uncle was a florist, so I had to do flowers. Everybody
Yeah.
loves flowers. And the tulips are rising with the sun, and I've reinforced the vase, you can see, so that you don't have to, people with dementia don't think traditionally, so
Right.
why should we lock them into that? So there's no metal in there. And so they can put the flowers into one another. They
Hmm.
can put them in their mouth. They can stick them in which way. So it doesn't matter. So it's about the endless
Yeah.
possibilities and just that feeling of accomplishment, no matter how
Right.
little. Even just staring at something is engagement. It's all good.
Yes.
That's what people realize that, maybe there's this expectation that there's going to be this big burst of energy from somebody. That's not necessary. That's no, especially
Hmm.
at later stages. But a little is huge. A little is a
Right.
lot. So people have
Yeah.
to remember that, and it's all about that acceptance of taking the person where they are on that particular day, in that particular moment, and always meeting them where they are with love and compassion.
Right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't get mad at somebody that has cancer. We understand. It's the same. And
Good
but we
days and
don't
bad
let it,
days.
yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like about it too is especially folks with dementia and this applies to neurodiverse people as well who would like
100%.
to work with this product. There's an affinity for repetition and doing acts repeatedly. So these different buckets have the different pieces where you can have repetitive acts, whether it's building or arranging or taking apart and putting back. And it really does take care of that need for them to do things with their hands and have somewhere for that energy to go.
Yeah, it's safe and it's they can do all that. They can do it
Yeah.
over and over again, and it's completely washable. And you know what else too is Geri-Gadgets are, because they're dishwasher safe. They're also shower and bath safe. So we know, yeah, we don't. That's a difficult situation for a lot of people, and that can
Yes.
ease the burden of that as well. If somebody,
Hmm.
right? We don't know whether it's the heat of the water or just the fear of falling or whatever, but sometimes something like this into a bath or tub situation might make that easier as well.
Right. It gives them something else to focus on. And you raise a really good point. Um, a lot of folks with dementia get very disoriented and agitated in the shower. And so if they have something that they can focus on or and kind of what is the word I'm looking for? Channel that energy into, their hands, then they're not necessarily as focused on the feeling, whether it's the temperature or the sensation of the water that they don't like.
Well, right. Even if it's holding on to the lid, like I said, it's similar to skin. So holding
Yeah.
on to that might be comforting or soothing. And so
Hmm.
sublimating that sort of energy into something as simple as that is actually really helpful. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems, but it's really, really kind of smart, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, every aspect of Geri-Gadgets was really thought out to those kinds of degrees. I mean, he studied color and there's no sharp edges on anything. All of that it took a lot of time to find exactly what was going to work. And there's a line of stuff in the future too. So that's your
Yeah.
to that later.
Cool. Well, so We talked about your caregiving journey and your light bulb moment of, I need to create something because there's a need here. But there's a lot of work that went into that in between of having the idea to having the physical thing for people to use and buy. So I would love to hear a little bit about that journey of, okay, well, this is my idea. Now what?
Yeah, well, when I saw the pot holder, you know,
Mhm.
the, which I call the sensory mat. Now, when I saw that work, there was a guy that did sales for where my mom was living, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." Now he's no longer with us. I would call him my co-founder, actually. I
Oh,
know, I'm very sad. Um, but he passed on. But we used to ideate every Saturday, bring things, do things, came up with all, work together on
mhm.
creating what might work. Went and took all the items to, they had the care home community had 5 other memory care units. They were all small, which is
Mhm.
great because it made it easier to really see what worked and what didn't.
Yeah.
And that's how we did it. And he actually introduced me to somebody who knew manufacturing, started
Mm.
asking questions and figuring out, oh, how do you do this?
Right.
Where do you do this? And that was, I didn't have any idea. You start to do research. I did all sorts of research and all different kinds of vendors. And when there's a will, there's a way. You start to
Yep.
learn and you start to figure it out. And my background, and I can tell you this now, is probably a good time, is I'm a
Yeah.
television producer and we're problem solvers. And I work in as an executive in charge of production, which means I hire, I staff, I schedule, I budget. So I'm organizing groups of people, lots of production, and you're a big problem solver. I'm a
Right.
helpaholic at heart. I'm just big problem solver.
I
So,
love that
so
word,
I don't know
alcoholic.
the answer to everything. I'll never know the answer to everything, but I sure know how to figure it out and find out who to ask. And
Yeah.
so that's what I did. And I learned all of this information about manufacturing and distribution and all this stuff. And I have a friend who, one of my best friends in England, she's like, Angela, you don't have the money to get in, or an investor's not coming on board for this. Why don't you 3D print here in
Mm.
Los Angeles? It's not going to be in silicone, but go ahead and do that because you can do that first. And
Right.
that was
It's like a
great.
proof of
I'm like, how
concept.
come I didn't think of that? I
Yeah.
know. And that's what I did. That was proof of concept. The
Yeah.
first bucket I did was, even though I brought in a sample one in balsa wood, it was the exact size, came
Mhm.
out huge. They didn't take the measurement down. It was funny. I mean, it wasn't funny. It was funny, not funny. It took 6 more weeks
Right.
to get it right. But
Oh
like,
my.
I know I have this giant bucket in my, I'm like, well, all three could fit into a giant one someday, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know, but it's
Storage, Geri-Gadget storage.
yeah, but it be big, it's bigger and heavier. You don't really want that. So you learn what you don't want in the process of what you do want.
Yes.
I also had the first shapes pieces were twice as thick. They didn't need to be. Then it was too heavy. They still stand up. They still hold up. So
Mhm.
it's also, that's twice as much material too for something being
Right.
heavy and expensive. And you don't want to do that either.
Right.
So it's all of this trial and error. So honestly, from idea to coming to the US took
Mhm.
8.
Wow.
And then you say it takes all these people that are overnight, it takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation.
Mhm.
It really
Yeah.
does. It's a lot of work. And I didn't leave my day job until 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah. It's so much to carry. And like you said, everybody jokes about an overnight success, but that's because they didn't hear about you until yesterday. But it's not like you just appeared out of the ether.
Right.
The work has gone on for a very long time to set the stage for people to know who you
Yeah.
are and what you do.
Yeah, and I still need a lot more people to know who I am and what I do, thanks to like you that are broadcasting it. And it really is starting to catch on in the neurodivergent space, which is really great
That's
because
great.
the more people that get a hold of something that can help ease the burden of caregivers is
Yeah.
huge. and make life easier for the person that is the person in that body, and make
Right.
their life just calmer and safer and more secure, and have that sort of connection easier, and the
Hmm.
communication without words easier.
Yeah.
Just facilitates everything, and that's where I know I found my purpose. That
Hmm.
this is something that I have to do, and that I'm driven to do, and that it is about, and that Geri-Gadgets is that bridge. It's that vessel. It's really about bringing that message to everybody about how important engagement and connection is. And I just happen to bring the right fabrication of something here, and
Hmm.
to do it with. So I hope more people do.
Yeah. Well, and I can see it being really useful in recovery situations too, from stroke or from accidents where people are starting to have to retrain their brain and their fine motor skills with their hands.
Yeah.
Um, there are a lot of applications to what
Yeah.
you've created.
Yeah, in OTs and PTs are picking it up. Actually,
Hmm.
the first person that bought a Jerry Gadget bucket, I had a shoulder back injury, was my physical therapist, and he's like, "Oh, I have a client that needs that I'm going to get this for that needs that." I'm like, "Oh, wow!" And I didn't even, I just saw that he bought it. He didn't
Yeah.
tell me. Yeah, it was great. It was like when these come out, awesome. And
That's
many
so exciting.
yeah, I know. So it does engage the senses, all of the hand speech therapists like it for the same
Hmm.
reason. It's just makes that come back,
Right.
helps. We can exercise our neuroplasty. We can
Mhm.
grow our brain. I thought, oh, all's lost. I've learned that that's not the case.
Right.
When I first started, I didn't know. I organically learned these things. I intuitively knew what my mom needed and how and why, but I didn't know that there was science by all these things until I dug in and went, "Oh, this is scientifically so. Oh,
Mhm.
so is this, and so is this." It just went with it. It happens to be the case, which is awesome. That's why
Mhm.
it got patented too, I think.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh, these are such I if you're listening to the podcast, I do strongly encourage you to watch it on the YouTube channel. For a lot of these interviews, it doesn't matter so much. But for this one, so you can see the product, I really highly recommend that you see what we're talking about. You mentioned something earlier that I would love to learn a little bit more about when you talked about determining the colors. So they are not primary colors like a kid's toy would be, but they are vibrant and engaging. How did you decide on what colors you wanted to use?
well, you study. I know the red plate, it helps people eat. Well, there's no
Hmm.
red because I don't want anybody eating the product. But
Right.
that's funny, they're pink. I mean, right? But it's true. But my mom, like many older adults, have a little bit of cataracts. You live long enough, all of us are going to get them.
Hmm.
Um, so the also dementia takes away some of that sensory thing. So
Yeah.
studying oranges and blues and things like that bring positive mood. So
Mm.
if you do some color studying, which is what I did, I got into the vibrancy of certain colors and what moods they bring. And that's why some of them repeat, but they're right. But funny little laugh I just did. But it's all in the study of how it makes somebody feel.
Mhm.
So that's really why they are colorful and bring in that mood. So when you approach somebody with something colorful, it does
Mhm.
take a little bit of time, but that's bringing in the mood and
Yeah.
setting the stage, really.
Right. Well, and I love that because it's a really great illustration of the amount of thought you've put into every aspect of this product. It wasn't just, oh, I like this, and that goes with that. which, is a fine decision-making process in some scenarios. But when it's intentional so that it elicits the response you want, that makes a really big difference.
Yeah, it's not about it just being cute.
Right.
That's what the difference between a child's toy and something this deliberate is
Yes.
that it is effective. And I know a lot of people go, oh, well, I could just buy a dollar toy in a dollar store or something like that. And that's toxic. That's got a
Yeah.
sharp
It's
edge.
not food grade or
It's not
medical
food
grade.
grade at all. This is medical grade. I'm not going
Yeah.
to I wouldn't, I didn't want my mom to put something in her mouth that's going to poison
Leach
her.
chemicals. Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's not going to work for me. I hope that
Hmm.
other people don't feel like that they can do that to their loved one.
Hmm.
These are built to last.
Hmm.
They're not going to harm somebody. If they drop, they're not going to hurt anybody, you know.
Hmm.
Um, they won't cut anything. Your skin gets very frail and fragile.
Yes.
Mine bruises easy now. Uh,
Hmm.
and it doesn't get any easier. So why have a substance that material that is harsh, hard?
Hmm.
It won't fade over time. That's the beauty. All of it is just such little goes a long way.
Hmm.
This is why you invest in a Geri-Gadget bucket, and it's very reasonably priced. You're going to have it forever, and the grandchild can, the grandparent, everybody can use it. So.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that you talked about a little bit earlier was about this idea of neuroplasticity and worrying about your own memory. And you recently read a book that's called Limitless. And then you were talking about a conversation that you had with a friend um, that shared an interesting take on it based on a famous comic book line. So, do you want to share a little bit about?
It's funny, but there's a picture I posted on LinkedIn last week. I was fortunate enough to one of the projects I got to do was for Comic-Con that was actually not Comic-Con in San Diego, but for the one in San Jose, and I got to meet Stan Lee. And
That's
yeah,
amazing.
and yeah, it was Winiac's Comic-Con version. I don't even know what it was called. I can't even remember. See, that's where, but he invented all the Marvel characters. He was the creator, and he came up with. He was great. He was 94 years old or something at that time. I think he died at 98 or 96 years old. But he loved creating these characters, and he said that with great power comes great responsibility.
Hmm.
And Jim Quick met him, and he was a big comic book hero. He was the guy with the boy with the broken brain, and he didn't
Hmm.
think he could learn anything. And when he met Stan Lee, he turned that expression on its side and said, "Well, with great responsibility comes great power." And that I shared with. I'm like, that was the thing that went. Well, reading that book, I went, well. I didn't know. That was the thing that opened my brain to say, oh my God, I can learn things. I mean, look what I've done with, I never thought I'd learn about distribution, manufacturing, all this stuff. I mean, I was producer doing all these things and doing one project after another, but I didn't think I could crack my own brain open and learn things. I always say, "Oh, I'm terrible at names," or "I'm bad at languages," or "I'm never going to be able." We put that in front of us, then
Hmm.
we're not going to be able to do anything.
Right.
We take that away from the quotient, and we start to develop exercises for which we can do things. We can. If we believe we
Yes.
can, we can. We stop. The only thing getting in our way is us. But there's certain
Right.
things that always we're our own limit. And so but it's true that there's a story in the book that talks about the taxi drivers in London because of the streets being so intricate and so complicated. The neuroplasty in the London taxi drivers is massive compared to other regular people. They have so much memory from memorizing these streets.
That's so interesting.
I,
I've been to London, but I've been to other cities as well in other countries where the way of driving is so very different, and you sit in the back seat and you just marvel at their ability to navigate the way that everything is laid out and the way other people drive. It's fascinating.
yeah, it's not like here. We go into autopilot
Hmm.
50% of our life. We brush our teeth, walk into a dark room, we turn on a switch. All of
Yeah.
these things are things that we automatically do in life. And
Hmm.
generally, somebody with dementia can't do any of those. Can you
Right.
imagine if we had to think about every single thing that we did automatically, putting on our sock, putting on our shoe, eating? Well, with dementia, they have to. So here's the thing, as simple as that, if we're exercising our mind by doing just things that we aren't in autopilot with, the
Hmm.
simple little tiny things, we're exercising our brain and we're going to develop our neuroplasticity. We can actually grow our own brain. Even though it's all automatically going to shrink as we age, we
Hmm.
can still grow this other part of it, which is pretty
Right.
amazing. I didn't know this. This is recent in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Well,
I thought my memory's better, but I was like, I've never had a good memory. My brother remembers everything. He's like, remember this, da, 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 da," and I'm like, no. How do you? I remember only that. I don't remember all these other details.
right.
Some people have that. I never did, and now I'm thinking, wow, okay, well, all's not lost for me. I thought, well, I'm going to go down that way, and I don't think we become caregivers because we wanted to, but we're like, oh, and I think we get into this idea is, okay, I'm going to do everything I can not to. I mean, I
Mhm.
diet, exercise, but what can I do if it's in my genetics? Well, there's
Right.
stuff we can do.
Yeah.
Amazing, which is, I think, a big relief, actually.
Yes. It does give a little bit more power back into your hands rather than just waiting for that shoe to drop. Right. And you said something that I've really been thinking about in the last few minutes, and I've been thinking about off and on based on other conversations, and that is the idea of living life on autopilot and letting so much autopilot take over, um, and not challenging yourself enough,
Right.
not taking a different route home, or just doing something a little bit different to exercise your brain. There's all these brain games, and I'm not saying that those aren't worthwhile. I'm sure they have their validity, but there's something about being out in the world and living it that I think changes things. So I do have a little bit of a concern about, people just playing games on their phone and thinking that that's going to be enough to keep their brain active. It's not. You've got to get out and experience things.
No, you're right. Taking a different route home, that's a different thing. Being in your phone is not a good thing. Actually, reading, really reading, that's why I like books, is way better for you than any
Screen
phone
time. Yeah.
screen time. 100 times. It's bending your brain. And all of it can be really simple. I think people don't do things because they think it has to be a giant change. It doesn't.
Right.
It can be really incremental. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be that far from your routine. It's a matter of, oh, that's where Jim Quick is like, I'm giving the guy a lot of credit. He should call me. Um, is he brushes his teeth with his opposite hand.
Interesting.
I know, I did it the first time today.
Yeah.
It's not that hard, but it's something he does differently, and it's
Hmm.
simple. Okay, I
Right.
can do that. I'm brushing my teeth anyway.
Right.
He
Yeah.
drinks a
Oh,
full
that's really
glass of
interesting.
water in the morning because I just drink coffee. Well, I'm going to drink a glass of water before I drink it. I take vitamins and a couple other things. I don't take regular vitamins, but I take some other things. And so I'll drink a full glass of water because I don't get enough water. I mean,
Yeah.
those are easy things to add to help our brains.
Right.
Okay, we can do things like that. So I'm all for it. they're not big. I can do little things. I exercise regularly anyway, so I'm good with
Yep.
that. I have a I don't eat processed food, so I'm good with that.
Yeah. It's all
Oh,
about
always
finding,
I could do a little better on the dessert part. I like sugar, but um, you know,
well, there also have to be things in life that you enjoy that make it worth living, right?
no, well, look, it's all about moderation, not deprivation.
Right.
Everything in moderation is fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was really excited to read that. So thank you for asking about that. I also
Yeah.
think, oh, by the way, a really good help to your listeners is when I was going through this whole process with my mom. Yes, I did have Jeremy to help me figure out the process of creating the supplies, the Geri-Gadgets, and I'm so sorry he's not here to see the success of them today.
Yeah.
But I did the grief recovery handbook. My dad was dying of lung cancer when my mom was diagnosed with dementia. So I was losing two people in my life at the same time.
Oh
My
my
dad
word.
took 10 weeks. My mom took 8 years, right?
Yeah.
Way different. And
Mhm.
I got a divorce after 20 years of marriage. So I had all of the pistons firing in a negative direction. And so the grief recovery handbook was a really, really good thing for me because it was about being able to write all this stuff down. Writing is really, really good.
Mhm.
Another really,
And you
really good
don't have to
exercise.
think of yourself as a good writer. It is not about that. It is just about getting the thoughts in your head out on paper.
Nobody has to read them. It doesn't have to be more than 2 minutes, whatever. I write all the stuff down.
Mhm.
I do use my notes by my bed and write stuff like that down. I'll write down a dream, I'll write down a thought, because that's good to remember.
Mhm.
And I don't read them to anybody, by the way. I don't
Yeah.
have to. But that all is good practices. But that helped me get through my grief. That helped me put my mom that I knew to rest, to
Mhm.
accept her for where she was, to not keep wishing her back into what once was. Those were
Yeah.
really good. I have support group stuff that I do. My kid's dad died. My kids go to a grief group. I've gone with my dog. I mean, those exist. They're not, they're free.
Mhm.
I,
Right.
I go to a weekly meeting. I have a support group. That is so important. Those are the things that keep me level. Don't do it alone. Everybody has been through something similar. You think you're
Yeah.
the only one. That's so not the case. Sometimes you think that nobody could have a worse story. When you hear other people's stories, you're like, oh gosh, I'm not so bad.
Yeah. And it's a matter of perspective. Your good is someone else's terrible, and your terrible is someone else's, well, that's better than what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, and you know what? We can't change our past, but we can change our perspective.
Hmm.
And that's a big relief. And
Yeah.
when we go, oh, look at my mom was not always great. And especially, oh my God, you realize Lewy body comes out early and they say horrible things sometimes way before they're even really diagnosed. And you're like, that's not a good thing. Well, then you realize, oh my God, that was the disease.
Right.
It wasn't her. Well,
Right.
when you know it's the disease, then you're like, really know, oh my God, that's the disease. Short-term memory is 30 seconds.
Hmm.
People lose their patience. What? I just told you that. Why can't you remember? Well, because they don't have short-term memory. That's why. 30
Yeah.
seconds is not a long time. So if we
No.
understand that, if caregivers understand that and don't get mad and frustrated, they're like, oh, that's the disease talking. Or the inhibitions. I'm at a care home community and this man's like, oh, nice rack. Well, I say thank you and move on because he doesn't know what he just said.
Right.
Has no idea. That's just part of his dementia. I didn't
Yeah.
like slap him and go, oh my God, and get offended. You're like, oh, thank you. Just pretend it didn't happen,
Right. Yeah, because
you
it will be
know,
gone for them in a short amount of time, and you
right.
just have to let it go. Yeah.
And then as a caregiver, you're not perfect. So if you got upset with them that time, don't feel bad. They'll forget.
Hmm.
And just try to be better. We're not perfect.
Right.
And that's the other thing. We're not perfect.
Hmm.
can't be. But the
No,
more we know it among one another, the better we can feel about being imperfect. I don't know any perfect people.
it doesn't exist. It's a
No,
fool's
we can
errand.
only strive to be better,
Right.
and that's it. So,
What is next for you and Jerry Gadgets? You alluded to you're working on something. I would love to hear what it is.
well, I mean, Geri-Gadgets are trying to go global. I mean, I have Canada now. I'm trying to, I'm in talks in Australia, New Zealand, UK. So I want to have it global. I've applied for the NIA grant. You can all cross your
Oh,
fingers.
exciting.
It's very competitive, but if I can get science, and I will keep on applying to things like this.
Mhm.
Because if we can prove things like, obviously, behaviors aren't the behavior that we've been treating symptoms with medication, but that if we can find ways to communicate that the behaviors like calming and all these things,
Mhm.
engagement and communications, this combats the loneliness, and the engagement combats all these behaviors,
Mhm.
because of that. That's a huge thing. Obviously, the caregiver relief. And the third would be the multi-generational aspect of it. So if we can prove all of these things scientifically, which we can, because proof is showing it in the work, and I can get science behind that, then ultimately, when our government works everything out, hopefully, that we can have more accessibility, and people that are underprivileged will be able to reap the benefits of Geri-Gadgets too.
Right. Yeah. So where can people find, we'll put links in the podcast notes, but
Well,
for those who
Geri-Gadgets,
are listening, where can they find it?
they'll always be able to find where to order through Geri-Gadgets.com, with or without the dash, Geri-Gadgets, not, there's no J, it's G. Um, yeah, with or without a dash.com. And then there's a order. So it'll tell you where to order in whatever country. Everyone will always be listed as we expand our distribution. You can't buy directly from me. I'm B2C. I'm not B2C.
Mhm.
I'm B2B. I'm business. I'm not packing and shipping in my garage. That's too much work right now. So yeah, but yeah, so right now it's SNS Worldwide, Direct Supply, Eugeria, and growing.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
so exciting.
Yeah.
And so the people who are ordering them are anywhere from caregivers to people who work in memory care facilities, physical therapists. So it's it's available to anyone who is interested, whether they're using it professionally or personally with a loved one, right?
100%. And I've had libraries buy them,
Oh,
schools are buying them,
yeah,
aftercare programs are buying them, daycares are buying them.
yeah.
Um, Yeah,
That's
and
great.
obviously caregivers. So
Yeah.
daycare caregiver services are buying them for their caregivers to take from place to place. So it's expanding its reach, and the more the merrier.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story today. And thank you to you for joining us and hearing all about it. You can catch us next time on Carefulist, the podcast, and you can find additional information at carefulist.com. Until next time, take care.